Hey everybody, BK with Masada Tactical here with another video, and today I wanted to continue the discussion we began having about first aid, specifically trauma care for those who carry a pistol, either being a civilian with a concealed carry permit or a professional warrior such as a law enforcement officer and so forth. In that video I discussed that in the civilian world, for the majority of us who don't wear body armor day in and day out, the majority of what we would call preventable cause of death would be penetrating chest trauma, just because most people shoot center mass and we don't wear body armor, hence making this area the most susceptible to get hit. And those I will address with the chest seal, which I still want to discuss, and I'll do that in another video. But I wanted to start actually the tool selection process by discussing tourniquets. And the reason I start with tourniquets is twofold. First of all, it is the most common tool out there. It's the one that most people are familiar with, they train with. A lot of programs out there are designed to teach people how to use tourniquets, including stop the bleed type programs and so forth. So it makes sense to start with a tool that most people are somewhat familiar with. The other thing is, even though from a shooting standpoint, we are concerned about penetrating chest trauma, I don't want to forget the fact that just as a civilian, as a citizen that's concerned about the well-being of himself, loved ones, and other people around, there are other threats that I should be concerned about. Motor vehicle accidents, industrial accidents, and a lot of those may actually result in injuries to limbs, arms, and legs. And those extremity hemorrhages, as we discussed in the past, are going to be dealt with a tourniquet. The idea is to apply the tourniquet to compress a blood vessel against the bone and hence stopping the bleed. I have three different types of tourniquets here, and I'm going to tell you the plus and minuses of each one, understanding that there is no perfect tool, and actually in a perfect world you should probably carry all three, as they will serve different purposes for different people at different times. All right, I'm going to begin with, actually before I begin, let me just make one umbrella statement about all of them. All of them can be bought on Amazon. Just be wary when you buy on Amazon. I mentioned it in the last video. Sometimes you get counterfeits from other countries that are not original, and some of them tend to fail under rigorous use. So if you put a tourniquet in a real life-saving event and it's a tourniquet that is not up to par and it will fail, that defeats the purpose, and that is not the time where you want to find that out. So this is one of the things where spending a couple extra bucks, none of these are very expensive, they're all $30 or less. Just spend a couple extra bucks and have the authentic actual tool, knowing that you can count on it when you need to. The other thing is they all will come in some sort of a plastic wrap, either shrink wrapped or just regular wraps. Most of them will say do not take it out of the wrap until you're ready to use. A lot of it has to do with, and rightfully so, they don't want the tools being misused, underused, or overused actually, specifically in training. And then when applied in the real world, they lost some of their integrity. With that said though, I will highly recommend take them out of that wrap and preset them the way you would need them when the moment comes. Nothing worse than having to deal with a plastic wrap when your hands are bloody, when you're shaking because of adrenaline, and now you have to overcome that one extra barrier before you can get the tool out, and your body's life, your own life, may depend on a real timely action, right? Even the scat tourniquet, which we're going to talk about in a second, will typically come with the strap, the time strap or the harness strap, over the windlass lever. And I certainly want to make sure it is out of the way, so when it's time to use it, I don't have to fight and negotiate that piece of Velcro, because you'll be amazed how something as small as that would actually get in your way when you need to use it. So I already mentioned the combat applied tourniquet, the CAT. It is made by North American Rescue. It is arguably the most common tourniquet out there. It is issued to a lot of our armed forces. A lot of police agencies issue this. Certainly a great tool. They did a lot of good upgrades, namely in the latest generation, the 7th generation, the windlass lever was upgraded from a really thin piece of plastic to one that is more robust and will withstand more pressure and torque, so that works out great. They also took their buckle system from a double buckle to a single, which makes it easier to run the tourniquet through and apply it under pressure. The one thing that I want to mention about tourniquet, and I'm going to talk about proper application in a minute, is the fact that the first step is the one that most people actually neglect, and that is taking as much of the slack off. A lot of people depend on the windlass lever to apply the pressure, the tension that needed in order to compress that blood vessel, where arguably taking as much of the tension off initially by a strong, deliberate pull is that much more important, okay? Or at least equally important. So just make sure you do that. And with the new buckle system, there's no reason for you not to be successful at giving it a good, strong yank before you move on to actually addressing with the lever. Another tourniquet that is very popular is called the Soft T. It is made by Tourniquet Solutions. Okay, this is actually a previous generation. Some differences between this one and the Cat. It still has a windlass lever, it still has a strap. The strap here actually has a buckle that can disengage it. This is brand new, so it's gonna be a little tight, which is good. But I can disengage it and I can reapply it. Sorry, there you go. Reapply it without necessarily having to take the strap off the buckle and put it back on. So somewhat less dexterity. This one was a little tight, obviously, but nothing you can overcome with brute force, which is a gross motor skill rather than having to snake a strap through a buckle. The windlass lever is made of steel, which is obviously a lot less likely to break or to be compromised under rigorous use. The biggest downfall in my mind is the fact that the anchor point here is not a horseshoe like in the Cat. It's actually a triangle, if you guys can see, right? Which once this windlass lever is under real pressure, real stress, you pull it a lot, right? And then you're trying to sneak it into that triangle. It's very hard. And even more so when you try to put it on yourself, doing it one-handed, trying to get it into this little anchor point becomes very, very problematic. So it's something to keep in mind. The newer generations, my understanding, I'm yet to get one, so Tourniquet Solutions, if you're hearing this, by all means, send me one. Actually, it has both systems. It has the triangle and it has a horseshoe. So depending on if you apply it on yourself, apply it on somebody else, or even you can use the horseshoe as an initial anchor point until you can secure with the triangle, which is gonna be certainly stronger and less chance of it slipping out. So Tourniquet Solutions with the Soft T corrected that in the newer generations. Other big difference between this one and the Cat is the Cat on the back has a piece of plastic. That's really what will apply the pressure, right? The Soft T does not have that piece of plastic. The disadvantage of the piece of plastic is that it is limited in the circumference. So the Cat can only accommodate circumferences up to this, which means if I have someone with a smaller limb, think a child, think a canine, if you have dogs and you're concerned about potentially saving their lives if they have a severe bleed, then the Cat may not work, right? Having something that doesn't have that limitation, I can get a much smaller circumference with this one because it's just the cloth or canvas strap. This also is not completely unlimited. It does have some limitations, right? So on really small arms, this is still not gonna work, but certainly better than the Cat. Last one is the SWAT tourniquet. The SWAT tourniquet, it is widely available on Amazon. The actual distributor right now in America is H&H Medical. So you can check their website as well. And I'm gonna put the links to all these companies on the video. SWAT does not actually refer to the tactical teams that police departments have, but it's actually the acronym of how this tourniquet works. It stands for stretch, wrap, and tuck. I stretch it to the point where I have enough pressure, and there's actually indicators on the tourniquet itself. If you guys can see, there are little ovals that should become circles and little rectangles that should become square as I'm stretching this. Right, so that allows you to really know that you're putting the right amount of tension, and while keeping that tension, I'll wrap it around and I keep doing that process till I have just the other end left, and then that one last end gets tucked in and just held there. Certainly a much lower tech. When I was in the military, this is actually the type of tourniquets we use. It wasn't made by SWAT T, but it was a similar design. Being low tech is not necessarily a bad thing. It makes it real easy to use. It's real straightforward. There's no levers or anchor points or anything like that. So there's nothing wrong with it, with the exception that these are extremely hard to put on yourself, because as you're trying to stretch and wrap it, it will roll and unroll and unfold and fall off of you. These are really effective being placed on somebody else. Another advantage is that they are non-limited in circumference. So this is actually the ones that we recommend and ideal for canines and pediatric patients. The other thing is they have additional uses. They can be used to create pressure dressings or even as an ace bandage, just because they have the flexibility, and at the end of the day, it's just a long strap. So it has multiple uses where the tourniquets, the cat and the soft tee are dedicated tourniquets. So with that whole discussion, I'm actually going to use the cat again, just because it is the most widely available. To give you an idea of the way I carry my kit, I have a cat to use on myself. I have a bunch of soft tees to use on other people. Again, I think they are easier to secure, better secure, they're less limited in circumference. So I like this a lot to be used on other people. And I carry a couple of SWAT tees in case I have to deal with canines that are bleeding and so forth. So I have a combination of all of them. Again, the cats are mostly for personal use. Okay? So the way we're gonna use this, again, this is designed to be applied on a limb, arm on the leg. When we apply them, we're gonna go as high and as tight as we can while staying off the actual joint, right? So as I put it on my arm, for example, I'm gonna go higher on the arm, okay? Traditional training used to say about 2 to 3 inches above the point of injury. I wanna go higher. I wanna go as high as I can while staying off the shoulder itself, right? I wanna be against the bone, not on a joint that has a lot of space where I may not actually catch that blood vessel. The reason we go higher than 2 to 3 inches is worth mentioning. One is I may miss a bleeder, okay? I may see one wound but not see another one, okay? An example can be an entry wound and an exit wound, but it can also be two completely unrelated wounds, right? So if there's an injury, let's say I'm responding to a blast where there was a lot of sharpening, I see some wounds, there's a chance that there are wounds higher on the limb, and I don't want to catch one, but the bleeder above is still going on, kind of defeats the purpose. By going higher, I know I'm catching most, may not be necessarily all, but certainly most of the bleeders. The other reason is blood vessels retract. Think of an elastic band that it's severed, it's gonna retract some, right? So if I go 2 inches above that point of wound, I may actually miss the blood vessel that now shot higher. So I wanna go above that. But probably the most important, remember I mentioned that the way these tourniquets work is by applying pressure on a blood vessel against the bone, right? If I apply pressure on the lower part of the extremities, arms or legs, which have two bones, I may actually potentially miss the blood vessel. It may be between the two bones, and I can cinch all day long, and that pressure is not transferred to the blood vessel itself. The upper part of the extremities, arm and legs, only have one bone. And if I go high, I know I'll be able to compress that blood vessel against the bone, which is ultimately the goal, right? So applying the tourniquet, I'm gonna go, as I said, high and tight. I am doing what's called self-application right now. Obviously the same, if not easier, is when I apply it on somebody else. I wanna take, as I mentioned, as much of the slack off. Notice when I apply it on myself, it is easier to pull towards myself, to pull away from me, to apply that pressure. So the way I stage the tourniquets and the way I put it on does matter, right? I'm putting on an arm right now. If I was to put on a leg, I have both hands free, so it's a little bit easier. Right? I'm gonna take as much slack off, and I am gonna put that Velcro against the lower part of the tourniquet, the lower strap. Now is where I'm gonna start using this windlass lever. This windlass lever has to be turned until it is very uncomfortable and very painful. I'm being nice to myself right now. The way I know it's working is the bleeding stop, right? If for whatever reason it is not a bleeder you can see, you suspect internal bleeding or so forth, or in training, let's say, a way for you to confirm that this is working is check for pulse. If there is no pulse, that bleeder will stop, right? Or the circulation will stop. If there's pulse, then there's still circulation going on, right? Once you got to the maximum level of pressure that you can apply that stop the bleed, you're gonna secure that windlass lever inside that anchor point, in this case, inside the U. Actually, I'm gonna get closer so you guys can see. right? So it is secure inside that U. I'm then gonna take this little tab and I'm gonna close it over. If you guys can see, it says time on it. This is where I should mark the time when that tourniquet has been applied. The reason the time is important is because when you arrive at the medical facility, they want to know how long this has been on. Okay, there is a whole process in relieving this, okay, because while I'm stopping circulation, I'm also stopping the relief of septic material that may be accumulated. And in order to negate that, certain drugs and medicines are going to be given, and the formula I use in order to calculate some of those is based on size and the length of time the tourniquet has been on. Today in training, we can take it off. I forgot to mention, but if you have the opportunity, it's not a must, but certainly going to help. If you have enough slack, you can run that through the horseshoe before you secure that tab. Today I'm going to take it off because again, this is a training scenario. There's no issues associated with it. In the real world, if you put a tourniquet on someone, you are never the one to remove it. It will be removed by someone that is qualified to do so, a physician, or if you're in a combat environment, a tactical medic, special operations medic, or equivalent. Again, very effective tool. It works real easily. I can apply it on myself, certainly can apply it on other people. It will save lives. There is no reason for anybody in the modern urban environment, sorry, I'm gonna sit down. In the modern urban environment, there's no reason for anybody to die from bleeding from an arm or a leg. Absolutely none. All right, so this will have probably a very high return on investment. It's worth having a few of these around the house, in your vehicle, and obviously on you proper if you also carry a firearm. All right, this tourniquet works in a very similar manner. This I cannot apply myself, but possibly in a future video I'll put on somebody else or a canine so you guys can see that this is applied. When you buy one of the SWAT tees, the instructions are very self-explanatory, very simple. It's literally printed onto the tourniquet itself. You can't go wrong. Well, suppose you could, but it's very difficult to do so. As always, I hope you found this information beneficial as we keep dropping more and more medical content. If there's any specific scenario that you are interested in knowing the answer for, please let us know. Anything from trauma care in combat to just daily events and incidents that you are concerned about, we'll be more than happy to share solutions. As always, just remember to please follow our social media, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, I don't know, pretty soon maybe TikTok. I don't know, probably not, but throwing it out there. Till next time, watch your six.